Meeting is James City County Board of Supervisors, September 26, 2023 at 1 p.m. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Ms. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Hippel?
Here. And Sue, Supervisor Sadler, could not be here today. She had some family stuff she needed to take care of. She has both parents are sick, and she needed to attend to both of those. So she's got her hands full right now, and so we gave her the day off. All right. Next, we'll move into presentations. Proclamation for Old Town Medical Center 30th anniversary.
I have the distinct honor of representing the county on the Old Town Medical and Dental Center board, and I just want to say what a great job that you do, and thank you for all that you do for the community. It is much appreciated, and your staff, you have an incredible staff. So, proclamation commending Old Town Medical and Dental Center on its 30th anniversary. Whereas Old Town Medical and Dental Center was founded on July 6, 1993 as a community-based solution to provide local access to comprehensive range of medical services for those members of the community without insurance, as well as those with Medicare and Medicaid. And whereas local individuals, members of 3 local governments, City of Williamsburg, James City County, and York County, and local medical providers came together to establish a primary care center funded jointly by local, public, and private organizations and staffed by volunteer health providers. And whereas the Williamsburg Area Medical Assistance Corporation, which is headed by a board of directors with representatives from the funding organizations as well as citizen, business, and community leaders, was formed to provide direction and oversight to the medical center. And whereas the medical center offers primary care, an OBGYN clinic, pediatrics, geriatrics, immunizations, lab work, family planning, physical exams, and a variety of other services and educational programs, including the Comprehensive Health Investment Program, which works closely with parents of young children on taking their prescribed medications and returning for checkups. And whereas Old Town Medical and Dental Center helps local residents address and manage their health care needs by delivering high-quality, cost-effective, and accessible Medicare to all, regardless of insurance status or ability to pay. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the chairman of the Board of Supervisors of James City County does hereby commend the Old Town Medical and Dental Center for its 30 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the Historic Triangle who otherwise may not have access to health care. And he will urge all citizens to recognize and celebrate the tremendous impact that the medical center has had on the local community. In witness whereof, Michael Hippel hereunto set his hand and caused the seal of the County of James City, Virginia, to be affixed this 26th day of September, 2023.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
I will be brief. First of all, Chairman Hippel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, as the other supervisors, greatly appreciated. I've had the pleasure of meeting all of you at one point or another. Special recognition to our representative, Ruth Larson. She has been phenomenal in her tenure as a representative to our board. I can't go without giving special acknowledgement to our very own Scott Stevens, who welcomed me 3 years ago as the executive director of Old Town, following in the footsteps of Dr. Mann and Judy Knutson, just to mention a couple. Tony Conyers was instrumental in the formation of Old Town way back July 6, 1993. And so it is quite an honor to be here. I'd like to thank James City County as our largest jurisdictional entity. You all have supported Old Town and continue to support Old Town tremendously. And so thank you for that. On behalf of our chairman of the board, Mr. Christopher James, our vice chairwoman, Becca Brule, we are greatly appreciative. And hopefully you all did receive specialized invitations to our gala. I know that you may or may not be able to attend, but if you can, you are more than welcome. The Williamsburg Lodge is where we will hold this gala on Saturday, September 30th. 7 to 11 p.m. All are welcome. And with that, I will yield. And again, thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, next I'm going to turn it over to our county administrator for some good news.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you letting me just make a couple of staff comments first. I'd like to recognize it is Human Resources Professional Day. That happens to be September 26th, so they get one day a year. It happens to be the day of your board meeting. So I do want to thank Patrick Teague and his staff. I know the last couple of years, if we haven't worked in any department, we've worked HR, and we haven't, we need more, we need more, we need more. And they are turning a lot of applicants and a lot of candidates through our process. So I want to thank he and his staff for their efforts. I'd also like to recognize Terry Costello. Just a short recognition. Terry, would you step to the podium? It'd be short and sweet, just so folks can see who you are, since you're in the room with a presentation as well. But Terry has been a planner too with James City County and worked with us. Is 35 plus years possible, Terry? I mean, that's hard to believe looking at you, but that's a very good tenure, so thank you for that. Last week we had the opportunity to hear she was recognized by the ZACO board with the service award, again, presented by the Virginia Association of Zoning Officials. And I just want to congratulate you for your service, for that recognition, and really thank you for your service to James City County and our residents for such a time and doing it so well. So with that, short and sweet. If you had something you want to say, I'd be happy for you to say it. I just wanted to give you the moment to be recognized with the board and others. So Terry?
Thank you. I appreciate it. It doesn't feel like 35 years. I love working here. So, but thank you.
Well, very good. Well, congratulations, Terry. Thank you. The other staff member I'd like to recognize is Teresa Said, our deputy clerk. Teresa, if you'll come forward so we can see you at the podium. I hate to miss some other staff members that I know receive recognition, but these two members, the board sees oftentimes. I was made aware of some events going on, and Teresa has worked for the county for 11 years now. I guess we made it past that mark. 10 was last summer. Was elected to serve as the 2023-2024 president of the Virginia Municipal Clerks Association, I guess this past June, but anyhow, for this year. And I think that speaks very well of her willingness to serve. We have a lot of staff members that serve in various associations, but get to the level of president, which a number of our staff members have in other departments, I think speaks really well for the caliber and quality of our staff that we have here. Another thing I'd like to just mention, it's a really big deal in the clerk's world, is she has completed the association for the Master Municipal Clerk, which is given by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks this past July. And there's a lot of training and education and experience requirements that go into that, but somebody has to make that effort. It doesn't just happen because you're doing your job. You have to put forth the effort to meet their requirements. I do want to say congratulations, Teresa. It's really good to have you in those two roles representing us, and I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for that as well. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam President.
all right, and I do just want to say thank you, board, for letting me just publicly congratulate both of those individuals. Again, just another reinforcement of our staff and the quality we have and their commitment to this community, and us just taking a moment to recognize and thank them as well. So I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move into consent calendars. Our consent calendar today, the acceptance of funds of $2,701 for Virginia Forfeit Assistance Share Program, contract award of $303,267 for the Human Resource Recruitment Management System, contract award from $299,907 for the James City County Library Public Restrooms Improvement, establishment of a one part-time position or permanent position, grant award of $20,890 for the Department of Motor Vehicles Alcohol Enforcement, a grant award of $36,610 for the Department of Motor Vehicles Police Traffic Service, a grant award of $75,947 for life returns to localities funds, grant award kinsmanship $68,180 kinsmanship navigation program, grant award of $30,000 radiology emergency preparedness, a grant award of $210,105 school security officers, Williamsburg, James City County Schools, a grant award of $10,000 for the Virginia DEQ CBPA Support Grant of 2023, grant award of $352,335, Virginia Fire Programs Funds, minute adoptions, resolution, Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance violation at 2800 Dumfries Mill Road, and a resolution of Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance violation at 2808 Dumfries Mills Road, and the Tri-Rivers Drug Task Force Agreement. Are there any items any member wishes to pull?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull items 14 and 15.
14 and 15, yes, sir. Pull 14. Any others anybody wishes to pull?
If not, I'll move the consent calendar.
Thank you, sir. All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I pulled these two items not because I have any questions about them, but just to highlight the fact that these are important issues that we deal with in order to protect the quality of our water and our environment. And these are two instances in which if it had simply been the case that the party involved had consulted with the county about expectations and requirements of building in the RPA, that this could have been avoided. It is something we take very seriously in the county, and just want to highlight that for the community. So with that, I will move the adoption of 14 and 15.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Next, we'll move into the board discussions. WATA update. Matthew, welcome. How you doing, sir?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, pleasure to meet you. I'm Matt Scully. I'm the new executive director for the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority. I appreciate the time here to present to you the important work we do at WATA and the services we provide. I know you're quite familiar with it, but this might be a refresher in some ways, and I want to make sure I leave time for any questions you may have. First, quickly about me, I moved with my family here a little over 2 years ago, finishing up time in the Army, chose to settle down here in the area specifically because of what we'd seen at visiting friends. And this is, I think, far and away the best place we've lived. So very excited to be here and grow roots and serve the community. All right, see if I can operate this. All right. Okay, so here's our agenda. All right, I do want to move through it quickly, but if you do have questions, please, by all means, ask. All right, so the history, I know you're probably very familiar with. Genesis of WATA was the James City County Transit from 1977. Really, WATA was established by the General Assembly in 2008. So we just celebrated our 15th birthday and continue to grow in our services. The jurisdictions we provide services to, of course, all of James City County, City of Williamsburg, and portions of York County, really the northern section of York County. In that original charter, we also had Colonial Williamsburg Foundation included, and a William Mary has been a member since the beginning as well. Our team, all right, so this is how we're organized. You can see we have the three jurisdictions represented, 2 members from the county. We do have the non-voting members from the Foundation, William Mary, and Virginia Department of Rail and Transit, Public Transit. What I'd like to highlight on here, besides the great support we receive from the county, and thank you, Human Resources, on today, your special day, I would like to highlight really how small our staff is. And as you well know, a small organization is still required to do all the tasks that large organizations have to do. We still have all the reports, all the grants we're trying to seek, and just with the smaller staff. So with that, we try to seek efficiencies as best we can. Partnering with the county and the other jurisdictions is one way we try to do that. Here's our current strength. At full strength, we'd be only 85 people. We are at 72. What hurts us the most is our operators. We are short 7 full-time operators for our fixed routes and 2 part-time ADA operators. And I'll talk a bit more about how that's affecting our services. Really, but the bottom line here is we're prevented from providing reliable service. And our fleet. So we have a total of 39 buses. That includes our large fixed routes. We did just gain the 10 compressed natural gas buses from Colonial Williamsburg. Average age of these large buses is about 6 years. You can see the life cycle, and it's an either or, matching either the mileage or the age. We do have a long-term plan, purchasing between 1 to 2 new buses every year. Pretty aggressive to try to replace this aging fleet. Our routes, okay, we have 12 fixed routes, and you can see the high-frequency route. Really, the only technically high-frequency route we have is Route 15 now through the historic area at every 15 minutes. Route 12 is on Ironbound. That is 30 minutes, so we call that medium frequency. And then all the others are at 1 hour. We even have one route that's 90 minutes out towards the Lackey Clinic. Our hours of operations, 6 a.m., 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for Sundays. Our Colonial Route 15 is a little bit different for that unique demand. And you'll see there in the bottom right, our 2003 numbers. Okay, of note, our numbers are still lacking pre-pandemic by about 200,000. That's in large part because we lack the frequency that we used to have. And there, just to show a map really how far reaching we are. Of note, we only have one connecting route with, or one connecting location rather, with Hampton Roads Transit, and that's down at Lee Hall. Okay, our services. Our additional services we provide. We do have a store, purchasing tickets and information, and that is at the transportation center at the train station. But more notably is paratransit. Now, this is a requirement for us to provide because of the federal funds we receive, but it is increasingly popular. It's based off 3/4 of a mile from a fixed route, so we are limited into who we can provide this service to. And this is because of the increased ridership. We are often finding ourselves having to flex some of our drivers from fixed routes to cover our ADA requirements. As you see there's been an 84% increase in ADA ridership since 2016. Now, we do have a partnership, one call center for transportation with Faith in Action, the ARC of Greater Williamsburg, and Peninsula Agency on Aging. It's really more of a convenience for the customers, one phone number to call, and then that center tries to determine who can best serve them. What we really find, because our services are apples to oranges, we take a lion's share of those calls. A little bit on the technology that we have, and this has been a recent investments we've had in this past year. The CAD AVL, computer-aided dispatch and automated vehicle locator, is really just a great opportunity for us to be able to perform better service, give more to the customers, and really assess how we are doing. It's so much easier now for customers to get on any of those forums, Google, Apple, Bing Maps, even the transit app, and plan your route. If we all driving somewhere and get directions. Well, that's what that little bus up there. Sometimes you maybe hit the walking. It's got 5 hours to get there. No, just got to hit the right button. Transit app. The little bus icon will show you public transit. All right, so we are integrated with that. And even in Google Maps, it shows all the bus stops. So it really is very easy for people to find how we can get them around in the area. Internally for us, these tools allow our dispatch to broadcast more easily to the bus drivers. A lot of times having to alternate routes, and this allows it for us. And then when you're riding on the bus, that screen you can see shows you where you are, what the next bus stop coming is. It makes it much easier. We will be going to mobile ticketing soon. and this will allow customers to buy tickets on their phone. You get the barcode, enter the bus, and just get it screened, okay? A lot easier. A lot of riders now come on with their dollar bills, have to feed it through. You know, it almost seems archaic now because few places still do that anymore. The stores, though, do offer you know, where you can buy the cards, you know, for so many tickets. So there are other options, but this mobile ticketing will be much easier for our customers. Now, the use of transit app, I will also add, is it's very convenient because it's used worldwide. I downloaded it years ago on a trip to New York City, and when I came here and learning more about WATA, like, look at that, I already have it. So especially with the tourists we have here, this will be, I think, a much easier for them to, and familiarity for them to use our services. Okay, a little bit about our customers. I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but this is taken from the 2020 Census and American Community Survey. But you know, we really are proud of the reach that we have, and clearly, I think the need we provide is shown there from the those in poverty, lacking cars, the disabled, et cetera. So there is a large population we serve, and now those are the ones in need. We are really looking to serve more than just those, but be the choice for those who may not need us. Benefits of transit. I won't harp too much on this because I'm sure you're familiar with it. I know you're fans of what we do. I'll just relay a bit, personal anecdote. A friend of mine, Amber Price, the president of Centera of Williamsburg Regional Center. When she heard I was getting this job, she said, "Oh, great, now I know who to call." All right, so when there's bad weather and they still need their staff to come in, to cook food, to take care of the patients, they need to know that public transit is still running. With the addition of Colonial 15, Route 15 Colonial through the historic area, I think there's greater outreach now to the tourists. And it occurred to me riding on one of the buses up at the Great Wolf Lodge, instead of 3 or 4 buses and 2 or 3 transfers, it's easy. Great Wolf Lodge, half-hour trip down to the transfer center, and then pick up the Colonial route right there to the visitor center. So a lot of, I think, ease in transit for the opportunities for our tourists now with that connection. Our budget. You can see, obviously, we get a lot of federal dollars, less so in state dollars, appreciative of the local dollars we receive from the county. But I owe it to you to show you where it's going. Obviously, salaries account for the majority of it, and then fuel and maintenance. And as we know, in the current conditions, those prices have not gone down. Capital expenses this year were primarily towards the technology I told you about. We do have 2 major construction projects, which are, those dollars for our capital or construction have been towards really the design. We'll see an increase in that in the next couple of years as we break ground on those projects. So overall operating expenses were 83% of our overall budget, and capital was 17%. We do pursue the many grants available through the Commonwealth, and as I'm sure you're familiar, many of them require some level of local match, anywhere from 4 to 20%, depending on the type of grant it is. Okay, our future, where are we going? So first, some of the major construction projects we have are operations and maintenance building. It's an old Penske maintenance facility, okay? It is in dire need of really meeting our needs and looking 40 years out the road where we can be and what we'll need for that. So you see the budget there, and most of it from the federal contributions. We intend to be breaking ground on that this spring. The Northern Transfer Center, our northern routes, we have 4 routes that meet up the Walmart and Lowe's, and we provide nothing for the customers there. There's no shelter, there's no customer service, so we want to build a true transfer center where they have those amenities that they deserve, and that will be off Moortown Road. And so the design for that is about 60% now. The 2.5 million currently available does not include 3 million that, and thank you to the county for the congressional discretionary spending that is allocated. We just need that budget approved. Okay, so that will close the gap tremendously, and then much more comfortable in our ability to close that with other state funds. We are also near completion of a transit strategic plan, and this will look out three-phase plan, look into the next 8 years to expand frequency and coverage across our area. And we'll be able to, again, really increase our services. This will be, there will be an added cost through the life of that. We're looking at potentially 50% increased costs for that end state of 3 phases. And electric buses, nothing on that yet. I will admit I am being very patient, deliberate in viewing other transit agencies and how they're doing with electric buses. I am pleased with the performance of the compressed natural gas buses that Colonial Williamsburg had been running and that we are now running. So I'll look to invest a bit more in those, at least in the medium term, until we have a better understanding of the future of electric buses. All right, bus stop improvements. I know this is an interest of many because I hear it from many citizens. My neighbors, when I first received this job, it was one thing that poked me out. My own mother-in-law, when she moved up here a year ago, was asking me questions about it, so I feel I owe her an explanation. But it is certainly, we all see it. When we drive and we see people standing in high grass or the rain, what can we do for them? We have there shown how we rate the classes of bus stops and what they might warrant. Okay, not expectation management. Not every stop is going to get a shelter. Okay, there's just not space for it, and it is very expensive. You can see how much a bus stop improvement might cost, and there are many hurdles we need to achieve. We have to overcome, and this is where working with the jurisdictions and the staff that they have can really facilitate the process. Most recent improvements on Long Hill Road, we're very happy with that, but that was in large part because of the construction expansion of Long Hill Road. Well, we just piggybacked on that, and we were able to save a lot of money because of what you were already doing. I see other opportunities in the county for us to be able to do much the same. So they are costly, but we do recognize the needs. And I am also looking at how the community itself can participate, with some of the nonprofits to support us in this.
Want questions at the end, or?
Ma'am, I'm happy to take
Okay.
questions now.
So this is a real thing of mine because what I've been told since joining the board is that there are some routes that are not permanent, and so you can't put anything there. But yet I see the same stop in front of the same, convalescent center, and I see someone standing there that has worked a very long shift and it's raining, and I mean, a folding chair, for goodness sakes, would be better. So are you saying, so when you talk about joining up with the community, since that particular, and I'm sure there's lots that are like that they've been there forever, that same route, is there a way to go to possibly the employer and say, hey, are you willing to sponsor a bench if you're not willing to do a shelter? If it's not going to work to do a shelter because of easements or whatever, but could you do a bench? And I apologize because I was just by there today, but the other place that I always see is like where the Fresh Market is. People have walked usually like from the Walmart over, and they're standing there with all their groceries, but there's nowhere to sit. So I just wonder, would the shopping center be willing to sponsor something? Is that some of the outreach that, and I know you're new and I get it. I just want to express to you that this is just something that has been brought up here many times is this exact thing, bus stop improvement. So I'm thrilled to see it, but I'm just curious if you can just just say a little bit more about?
Yes, so the way ahead, and I appreciate the question and the concern. I will admit, lack of staff is a challenge. We are absent a planner, and boy, when we hire that planner and we have the applications in, this rose will be pinned on that planner to help prioritize with the jurisdictions what are the priority stops and what we want there, and then how can we achieve that. In the meantime, I have been trying to invest time in meeting more leaders of the community, Colonial Williamsburg Foundation as an example, and how can we get some funding and some assistance. I could certainly spend more time reaching out to the businesses, and sponsorship of bus stops has come up, and I think there is certainly some potential for that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Larson, if I could add, I do think part of conversation that Mr. Scalia and I have just had, just as an aside, is what if we fund things? And I don't know how far you'd want to get, not to put it all in his court, but if you get talking with them and dollars, they're trying to spread it across all the localities and have some criteria that would make what might be limited federal opportunities make the most sense for the overall ridership. But if we're concerned, and I think we're concerned with all, but primarily our residents and users, maybe there's an option for us to do something less than a shelter that provides a concrete pad and a bench at the least, and maybe garbage collection opportunities where we put that in and we provide funding and we help prioritize that. We could seek sponsorships later. I think there are businesses that, WATA has often allowed it on their buses for people to buy ads. Maybe, but I wouldn't want to rely just on sponsorships, because then on much needed stops, that business may not be willing. And so you have a place that's a high priority. It's just not money. I'd rather have an opportunity to get a sense from you in the future of, do we put dollars forward to help improve some sites with the agreement that WATA would then maintain those facilities, so we wouldn't get into that arena. That capital piece, I think, is easier for us than the maintenance of those stops going forward. And
Thank you.
he at least seemed open to that in concept, so.
And just to continue along with that a little bit, this is a really challenging area, but it's also an area where there are some opportunities still out there. I know you're in the process of developing a strategic plan that the Department of Rail and Public Transit is asking for. Right. And as part of that, I'm hoping that you'll have a very aggressive effort to take advantage of the small scale capital improvement projects, because this is exactly the kind of thing that funding would support. The provision of amenities for riders, and I can tell you that there are enormous challenges in all of this. There's a project going on right now that we're trying to accumulate the final funding for the improvement of Route 60 between the fire station and James River Elementary School. And one of the objectives there was to make sure that we put some shelters out because there have been serious accidents involving transit users that have been hit by cars or trucks that are on the roadway because there's no place for the bus to pull off, and oftentimes people are rushing right through. Now, the expectation was we were going to be able to put a transit stop along the roadway in front of Carter's Grove, but it's now in a conservation easement, and that makes it virtually impossible for us to get that plan. So it's going to take a lot of coordination, but I think there are some good resources out there, and if we can partner with the county's funding and private funding, hopefully we can make some real progress here.
No, thank you. And so plenty of streams from state to jurisdictions. City of Williamsburg has bus stop amenities in their most recent budget, and that's where we'll want to then work specifically with the county, have you prioritize for us, and then work together in achieving those. So lots of work to do. I certainly acknowledge that. So as we want to talk any more about challenges. All right, so evolving WATA is our new transit strategic plan. Expanding ridership over coverage; those are the two terms in the transit world. And I think it's sound that we really need to increase ridership first before going to coverage, and that's what this plan goes. So it's 70% focused on ridership, really increasing frequency in our bigger routes. And then 30% to coverage. Again, as I mentioned before, this will likely be a 50% increase in resources required over the 8 years. I will say again, returning to pre-COVID levels of service is a great challenge. As you may recall, we used to have high frequency on routes Long Hill, Richmond Road, Merrimack Trail, and Ironbound between 6 a.m., 9 a.m., and then 3 and 6 p.m. Okay, we just can't do that yet. So back to the being able to be reliable. I was dispatch received a call yesterday when I was in that area. Customer asking, is Route 12A our, the 30-minute interval on Ironbound route, is it running today? It's like, well, unfortunately it's not, because again, we had to divert a driver. So that's that right now for me is our greatest challenge. The trolley, I know, which is what we call Route 12 now, Ironbound, used to run until 11 p.m. on Friday night. And this is a real concern for the businesses too, right? Not just customers, but where the customers are going. So that is greatest challenge. The resources, the bus drivers, everybody's challenged. I do appreciate the support and us being able to fund raises for our drivers. I will say this: we do not have a problem with retention. We see many drivers coming from other transit or bus driving places to work for us. I think we have a great climate. Very proud to have fallen in on it. The challenge is hiring them. However, I don't want to take the retention for granted, because the more we have to have overtime or divert them, different routes, that just places a strain on them, and then they might just consider, is this worth it? So those are the challenges. Right now, retention's great, but and we do get a healthy number of applicants. We just need to get in the last 10 yards and hired and trained. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have to present, but I'm happy to take any other questions.
So if I could, as I mentioned to Mr. Scalia, and I know he knew, I chair a group in Richmond called the Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee for the Department of Rail and Public Transit, and our job is to develop formulas that the Commonwealth Transportation Board can adopt in order to provide incentives for local transit systems to try to increase their reach and their service. And one of the things that I've noticed recently has been the great success that transit systems that have eliminated fares have received. And if our goal was to make money off of the ridership, then that would be one thing. But I think our goal really is more about making sure that people have dependable transportation and that we reduce the amount of automobile traffic on our roads. So I'm wondering if that's something that you're interested in exploring, and what the amount of fare collection we currently have might be in terms of that total $9 million plus budget.
So I appreciate the question. As I had mentioned before, I was a skeptic initially until I started seeing the numbers. And as an example, learned recently, Greater Richmond Transit recently went to fare free, and their ridership has increased. So our fare, it's not about making money for us. 5% of our revenues is really from fare collection. So and with some grants offered for this, I am absolutely interested in pursuing this. I'll look at other organizations and see what it might do for us and bring it to my board.
Great, thank you. I know that it's a challenge, because especially in our system, because of the fact of Colonial Williamsburg and the college both participating in the funding of the transit system to some degree, and you have to kind of say to them, well, you're going to have to continue to provide that even if we go fare free, just as our local governments would be expected to continue that. Yeah. The other thing that I was curious about was just the degree to which we're going to be able to expand on the frequency of service and a continuation of the kind of bidirectional bus service, because I think one of the great frustrations is that if you get on the bus and you only are going to go 2 stops, and then when you want to use the bus to go home, you got to go through 14 or 15 stops in order to get back to your original starting place.
Right, so in phase one of our strategic plan, we'll reroute some of those northern routes to our new Northern Transfer Center, and we'll increase frequencies on routes 1 and 2, the Lee Hall and Richmond Road. To your specific question of bidirectional, I do not believe we will have that on any of these routes. Maybe small. I think there are small legs of some, but for the most part, not throughout. It does make it inconvenient. Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add was thank you for the stops on Long Hill. We finally got them installed, and they are really, really nice. I understand that the solar panels power some sort of a lighting system, and is that operational yet, or is it still being?
It is not operational, and still looking at trying to fix that. It may. I don't know the cause, but we are trying to get those solar panels operating.
It's nice to be able to pull out on Long Hill and see people using those things.
Yes, yes, it is.
They do get used, so thank you.
I hope I see that one day near me as well.
You will.
Okay. So just a couple, first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you and welcome. And it's nice to hear that you and your family are liking it here. A couple questions. You're going to the mobile app and ticketing and that type of thing. I wondered with I don't know your age, if you have folks that might not have a smartphone, might not be, so what might be in store? And I know you said they could go to the store to get the paper ticket. So is there going to be some grace, because they obviously might have to use transit to get to the store to get the ticket. So will there be some grace shown there while they're trying to figure all that out?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. We are not getting rid of any of our current payment methods.
Okay.
So they will still be able to use, purchase the store or pay there on the bus.
Okay, great. And then it sounds as though you're very much out in different areas of your, that you're in dispatch, you're on the buses, sounds like you're very active. How often are you on a bus and riding?
Not as often as I would like, but
You got other things you got going on.
well, but every time I get on the bus, I'm not disappointed that I spent time there, right? Getting to know the drivers, their backgrounds, what brought them to WATA, what keeps them at WATA, but then seeing the riders. I dropped my car off for the annual inspection, and there's a bus stop right around the corner. So I go up, I'm waiting at the bus stop in the grass, tall grass at springtime. And my daughter contacts me later. Dad, I just got a note from my friend. Did she see you out at the bus stop this morning on their way to school? Yes, that was me. So my experience is this. I'm venturing to guess most of us in this room don't have to rely on public transit. For me, it was humbling. As I'm there in the grass with my suitcase at my feet, seeing all the traffic go by. So that helps me appreciate the need for bus stop improvement, right? And it was a nice day. And then, riding on the bus, the other thing I love is seeing the relationships between the drivers and the passengers. There are real relationships, with the frequent riders. And so the operators appreciate the service they're providing to the community that really needs it. Now, again, how do we increase choice ridership? For me, it was also, before I received this job, let me get smart and actually ride the bus. First time on a public bus. And I didn't know what to do. I was apprehensive about it. I had my dollars and had to feed in a machine. I haven't done that since I played in an arcade. And of course, it didn't go in, so there's a stress I have, and then how am I watching? Where am I going? And I missed a connection. So I venture to guess most people, choice riders, have that same apprehension. So another form of outreach I want to make is get people more familiar with it. We do, I think, a good job with Wilman Mary. In fact, their ridership on Route 12, ironbound, numbers really increased. We had huge numbers on that route because of college students using it. So we make ourselves more available. My daughter in high school is taking a class, what's it called, life skills type class. Well, I want to get with the schools and, hey, we will bring a bus and one day teach them how to route plan and actually get on a bus. I think that could help people get over that hurdle of apprehension of riding public transit.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Matt, thanks for coming out. And now with Colonial Williamsburg taking over that route there, how does that get paid into the, I know we're only making 5% on actual we're paying and looking to possibly do ride free, but how did that work? How did that deal work out?
So the agreement has them paying initially, the initial cost is $850,000, and it decreases every year for the next, I believe it's 5 or 6 years. It's a 7-year agreement. So they are funding in that way. We do not charge fare on Route 15. A couple different reasons, but it really would really put a kink in our operation. It would slow things down. It's already a very demanding route. It is supplemented by some of their payment, but that will decrease over time.
And this is two totally separate items. Have you ever talked with the schools and said, is there anything we can do joining together as far as the bus issue? You know, y'all have some issues, they have some issues. Is there any mutual thing that we could do as far as school buses? I know everybody, you're
Right.
always riding a school bus. Everybody's always ridden the school bus. But maybe it's time to look at a different way of riding a school bus.
So no, I appreciate that question. I've met with their director of bus operations, and we have not pursued this path. I'm well aware of the challenges the school district has had this year, and so I'll reach back out to them and see if there might be something possible.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Really
Matt.
appreciate
You do a
it.
great
Thank you very
job.
much. I appreciate it.
very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move on to number 2, brush fire response. Chief? It was just a little fire, wasn't it? That's what it said. That's what it said in the paper.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Afternoon.
Jason's got a presentation up. So, as you know, 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, we responded to a small fire, as Mr. Hippel said, on Croker Road. So I wanted to kind of just give you a brief overview of kind of what we experienced, what our folks experienced there, what it looks like today, and kind of what else was happening at the same time that sort of made this a unique situation for us. So I have mostly pictures, so it's not a whole lot of words. You'll hear me talk some, but at least kind of wanted to give you a visual representation of what our folks saw. So initially we were dispatched to for a structure fire in the 8200 block, 8212 Croker Road. This is the site where the president's heads were relocated. They use it as a debris management site, so they take in truckloads of debris from places like I-64 construction, land clearing, things like that. They come there, it's piled up, and then they go through a grinding operation to turn it into mulch, dye it brown, and sell off the finished mulch. So we were initially dispatched to a structure fire there. The notes were that a person was stuck in an excavator on top of a pile that was on fire, and the fire was close to the excavator. So immediately our folks that were responding are thinking how to position the apparatus in order to essentially effect a rescue, get a hose line in place between the fire and that person that was potentially trapped in the excavator. So when they arrived, they saw something similar to this. This is not an exact arrival photo, but something similar, where basically a pile higher than they could see what was on fire, a large pile, and they were trying to assess the situation, figure out where the operator was the person that was injured. As they drove around the pile, they located the excavator that had fire impinged on it. Were able to find the operators. Actually, one of the other excavators had been able to get the operator off. The operator actually got on another excavator, and they drove off the pile while riding on the excavator. In that process, another worker was injured climbing down off the pile. And if we describe this pile, you'll see in some photos, I would say there's places probably at least 30 feet high. It's definitely 20 or 25 feet in most areas of the pile. And you can see from just these few pictures, you'll see some others. A lot of times we think of debris, we think of sort of more the branch parts, right? A lot of leafy area, things like this. This is everything from tree stumps 3 foot across to logs 10, 12, 14 feet long, all mixed together in this pile. So I'm sure those folks trying to evacuate that pile in a very quick manner were doing some navigating as they step around that pile. The excavator had been impinged with fire and damaged the hydraulic system, so they couldn't move the excavator anymore. We found out later in their investigation that they had noticed a fire a couple of days earlier, possibly in line with a storm that came through the area with a lightning strike. You don't know that for sure, but just thinking out of the box what it could be. Could be flicked of a cigarette, could be any number of things to something like that. But and they had been extinguished. I'll show you in a few minutes about some of the water that they had on site. And I guess they deal with this over the years, small fires. We've been involved with some other places that produce mulch, and it's a common occurrence for them to deal with a small fire that creates, and they typically extinguish that without calling us. In this case, it probably had been going on a couple of days. They got to work that morning. They noticed the fire was larger. They were trying to use the excavator to access it in order to extinguish it when the excavator was damaged and unable to be moved. So we quickly realized that the person was off of the excavator. We ended up transporting one person with minor injuries. And then we went immediately to what's next. And next is really trying to save the equipment that was there impinged with fire. I mean, those are hundreds of thousands of dollars for an excavator. The staff told us this was their favorite one. It's the one they liked the most. And it's the one that was on top of the pile trying to do work. So it was definitely something they wanted us to attempt to save. So as we kind of navigate and begin to set up an operation, this is a picture of York County's Engine 5, which is equipped with what we call a telesquirt. So it's an aerial, it's not a ladder like you think on a ladder truck, but it allows us to spray water from a position about 55 feet in the air. So initially we set up water supply. One of the challenges here is this is an area that's unhydraned, so all the water we use we had to bring. So we set up defensive operations. You can see that excavator there in the smoke, trying to get that hose stream on there to try to protect as much as we could. And throughout the course of the fire, this excavator was kind of dropping. I was there for 5 or 6 hours with it. As the pile was burning, the excavator was sort of dropping into the pile as that debris burned from around it. So it's pretty deep-seated fire. So the challenge, you're spraying that hose line, it's really deflecting off all those logs and stumps, and trying to get it down to the seat to extinguish it became very difficult. So our initial operation was to try to save that excavator, recognizing that there probably wasn't enough water in James City County to put it out. We knew that this was likely to burn for days and weeks, and it has. However, we thought we could at least save as much of that equipment as we could. We knew it had been damaged, but hopefully not total. So this is another example. This is our ladder truck from Station 1. It was actually running out of Station 3 that day because of a piece of equipment out of service. And that tank there is connected to a well they have on site that they use for anything from mixing the dye for the mulch to extinguishing small fires. You kind of look on the right-hand side of that picture, there's a small blue hose line that kind of navigates up over the pile. That's a line they have in existence that they put up, whether they have a hot spot in the mulch or something in the pile, and they had been trying to do that on this day as well. One of the unique things around these ladder trucks weigh almost 80,000 pounds. They are safest operating over the rear, like you see in this picture, because they use the truck as a counterweight, essentially, so they can reach out further. Over time, this is built-up mulch and sort of organic material that's been over time that they drive bulldozers on, but over time, the back of that ladder truck began to drop and probably dropped about 2 feet into that soil. So at some point, we had to shut everything down, lift it up, and put panels in place to help spread that weight out again. So a few unique challenges we don't typically deal with here. You can see from that photo some of the size of the debris that we're talking about. Adjacent to the large pile would be off to the right of that photo. You can see there behind York County's engine is the finished mulch pile. So they had been collecting all this debris, again, grinding into finished mulch, dyeing it brown, and they had a pretty significant order for mulch that they were using, going to grind up this large pile. The grinder had been down for about 6 months due to maintenance and getting some repairs made, so I think the pile had gotten much larger than they expected, and we're hoping to start grinding again to create that finished mulch as you see there. So pretty quickly the owners said, hey, I know there's not much you can do about this. Try to save the excavator. Let's save what we can, but please also save the finished mulch, because at the end of the day, that's product they were going to sell. We early on recognized that we really couldn't see much. We climbed on top of a pile of gravel that was there to try to get some kind of an aerial view, but it was very difficult. James City County Police Department was contacted and brought their drone team, 2 members of the drone team that were on duty, came out, and they provided us some aerial surveillance, basically, so we could get an idea of how big the pile was, where was the fire going. So this is a brief 30-second video clip of what that footage when the drone first went up provided us. And we've got they get about 15, 20 minutes of flight time, and then we come back down, change batteries, and put it back up. So we were able to try to figure out a plan of action. At some point, we realized we were probably not going to be able to save that excavator, but we were concerned about the diesel fuel that was on board and how that could make the situation worse. So we sort of moved on to how do we make this pile smaller. To put things in perspective for you, that fire engine that's located there, again, that's York County's in this photo right now, in the screenshot there right now. That truck is about 35 or 40 feet long. So kind of putting things in perspective of how big the pile was. So again, it's just another kind of aerial photo. What you'll notice at the bottom left where you see the what we call Tower 1, you'll notice there's sort of above Tower 1, there's kind of a natural break there in the pile that had started. We recognized that when we had the drone footage up, we could see that that was low. To be honest, when we first looked at the drone footage, we thought it was significantly lower, and we thought, great, we've got to break through the pile. When we walked over there and actually looked, it went from being 30 feet tall to 15 feet tall. So while it was a break, it wasn't what we were hoping for. So we worked with the staff there to get all their operators in, get their other equipment moved over. At this point, we were trying to hope to eliminate it from spreading other places, and we're able to try to start cutting a line through the pile, just separate and create some separation. So they worked in that area. I have a couple other photos of that as well. You can see there we brought in another excavator that's in the top kind of left corner of that photo, and you'll see we repositioned that hose line to protect that edge, and that allowed the excavator operator to go through there and try to remove debris. Later, they brought in a second excavator and really started to pick that pile apart. Just to clean that section along there was probably at least 4 hours, maybe closer to 5, for them to start to create some separation. And that was really just a hope to isolate the rest of the pile from burning. It's another aerial photo of that. One of the unique challenges that we ran into here, again, I mentioned earlier, was no hydrants in that area. So we have to haul in water. And that's something that we're familiar with. We have one tanker, but an operation this side, if you're going to sustain water flows that long, you've got to have a lot of other tanker operations. So in this particular case, you'll see 3 different colored tanks. They hold about the same amount of water that one tanker can carry for us. And then we draft out of those. So you can see the fire pumper there is drafting out of that tank in the middle. The other 2 tanks allowed 2 tankers to be simultaneously dumping from one tank to the other using pressure. We basically flow water through there, and it creates a siphon and pulls water from one tank to another. So while we use tanker operations, a couple times a year, certainly to this volume and for this long, I think we ended up making about 180 tanker trips with 7 tankers running back and forth. Here's a picture using the Croker Library as the fill site. You can see the tankers are lined up there. Williamsburg served as an engine there that filled those tankers and was able to get them back on the road very quickly. It was taking about 3 minutes to fill a truck, and they're back on the road down to the site. I include this picture because you've noticed on the left there, the pickup truck is, that service truck is from our fleet department. So Charlie and Bobby from Fleet came up. At some point we realized we were getting lower on fuel in the apparatus and had to think through a refueling process for both the equipment that was fixed at the location and the tankers. So they had the idea that, hey, while you're getting filled up with water on one side, we'll fill you up with fuel on the other side. And they ran, those carry about 200 gallons of diesel fuel and was able to do that. Another truck was able to come and fill the trucks at the site. So it's one of the first times, at least in my career here, that we've had to fill trucks on site. So that was interesting, and Fleet very quickly supported us and was able to put a plan together to keep everybody on the road. So So just a little bit about kind of our information, how we got here. So we were dispatched at structure fire initially. You'll see the units there. We send 3 engines, a ladder truck, a rescue, 2 medic units, a battalion chief and EMS supervisor. And in this case, also because it's in a rural area, added a tanker. So it took James City County and York County to fill out that first assignment. That's a pretty standard response for us in this area. We would get mutual aid from York County early. When we got there, realized what we had. Actually, Medic 11 was not able to respond on this call. Sometimes if they're in quarters, depending on what the staffing's like, who's around the station for the day, we dropped the medic unit staffing in order to take one of the other trucks out of the station. If you've been to Station 1, there's a lot of different units out of there. So in this case, the medic crew was able to take the tanker. Then later we had add some additional units from us. Williamsburg, New Kent ended up sending 3 tankers. Gloucester County sent us a tanker from Abington Volunteer Fire and Rescue. So we had a total of 7 tankers running that water shuttle for the 180 trips total. What also made this a unique challenge was while this was occurring, at 8 o'clock we'd had sort of the first call of the morning. They had one earlier, 6:30 or so. 8 o'clock they had the first call, had a medic unit tied up. At 8:13 this call came out that took all those units you just saw on the page before that. At 8:28 they had a gas leak, which takes 2 engines, a ladder, a medic, and a battalion chief. At 8:30 we had an allergic reaction at a bus stop with multiple kids had been stung by bees. So that took 2 medic units and an engine and an EMS supervisor. We had an unconscious patient going out at 8:36. I ended up responding from my office to go to that call, and at one point it was myself and a medic unit was all we had available to go to that. We then, 20 minutes later or so, got a gas leak inside, which again takes 2 engines and a ladder. While everyone was tied up there, some other units were clearing up. We were dispatched to a vehicle accident at the New Kent County line with a person trapped, car overturned, and had no units available to respond to that. Luckily, some off-duty folks had been getting the pages and had come in. We cleared up a medic unit from the fire and sort of assembled a crew of off-duty people. Somebody picked up the engine, the medic unit came, and all arrived with New Kent and were able to handle that accident. Ended up requiring the patient to be flown out. So we thought we were gonna have to do a landing zone, which typically would involve another unit. This time they were able to handle it on scene. In the middle of that, we had a dispatch as a cardiac arrest, which typically would take an EMS supervisor, an engine, and an ambulance, and had no one to respond to that. So one of our assistant chiefs was going by himself initially, and then we're able to get a medic unit added. And then the last one there at 9:12, another fall fracture that took a medic and an engine to handle because of an out of district. So all of that occurred in about an hour. So at some point, I was trying to help figure out what we had and where we were going, and I finally pulled over on the side of Monticello Avenue in front of Powhatan Settlement and just took out a piece of paper and started trying to write down who we had. And every time we had a unit mark available from the hospital, they'd go to somewhere else. We'd get an engine cleared up, it would go somewhere else. And we did that for about an hour straight on top of everyone that was already working the fire and call mutual aid. So,
Chief, is this an unusual amount of traffic in the morning?
so I think the severity of those calls is probably the unusual part to be all stacked up. I know when Mr. Hipple came to the fire, the conversation he and I had is more and more often we're seeing where all of our medic units are committed, but we typically have an engine or 2 available. And then, the good thing about the engine is they're at the medical call maybe 20 minutes or so when they clear up. The medic unit has to go transport to the hospital and come back. But we've been noticing that more. It's 8 a.m., it's 10 a.m., it's 1 in the afternoon, it's sometimes 8 o'clock at night. There's no rhyme or reason. It's on Mondays, it's on Fridays, it's on Sundays, but I think what made this unique was not just having an EMS call that may take an ambulance, but almost all of those calls are 2 or 3 units to send the effective response force. So all that stacking up within an hour of us, on top of the significant size of the fire we were at, I think really made this a unique challenge for us. So Mr. Hilton asked, how often does it happen where all the medic units are tied up? And in our current way we extract information in our reporting system, it's very difficult to look at where was everybody at one point in time. We can see how many calls they ran the day, but it really requires some manual manipulation of the data to line them all up. So we're trying to find a way that we can say, hey, on Tuesday at 9 a.m., what was the status of all of our units? So hope we can visualize that better. If we can figure those things out, it's easier to plan for, right? If we need a surge unit at a particular time of day or something like that, we can plan for. And then just like that, it took another 45, 30 minutes for some of those units to clear up from the hospital, and then we got a pause, right? And they gave a chance for everybody, not the ones at the fire, but everyone else to get back in service. And so during that time, We had pulled Williamsburg's engine to the fire. Williamsburg's ladder truck went down to one of the gas leaks. Williamsburg's medic unit was on a call, and Williamsburg had nothing. They had called for Camp Perry to come fill in. They got their ladder truck cleared up. We started having more calls, so they actually gave us Camp Perry's engine. So we had some off-duty people come staff the station. We had Camp Perry covering Station 4. At some point, Williamsburg said, just hold on to our ladder truck until this ends and take it wherever you need it. So it was a lot of coordination going on, again, for about an hour, and then it was like, you just sat kind of waiting on the radio to see what's the next call, and they stopped for an hour or 2 hours. So it really all that together, and then again, the size of the Croker Road operation was really significant.
Thank you.
So, and back on the Croker Road fire, some folks have asked us, some in our own department, some from the community, why just all that water flowing on a pile of sticks, right? And I think, first of all, a piece of equipment is significant cost, and a tool they use to keep their business operational. The second thing is, while we may see it as sticks, it's really raw goods as an input into their business operation. And then certainly the finished mulching pile is goods they're going to sell. So I think it was worthy of our time and effort. It ended up being a fantastic, it was a low stress. So it ended up being a fantastic training opportunity. We were able to, one of the volunteers that was there was trying to get released on one of the apparatus and made probably 50 trips in the tanker. So by the end of the day, we said, you're good. If you can make 50 trips, you're good. So it ended up being a good training operation. Morale was good. We took care of our folks, and they made it nice. So since then, the fire marshal's office and zoning has followed up with the property, because really you can tell from that the pile was significant. So Fire Marshal Lamb has worked with them about bringing those piles back into compliance. Of course, now I've got a couple photos of what it looks like this morning. The pile size is not really the issue anymore, because most of that has been destroyed by the fire. But in future, making sure we have correct pile sizes, both in height, width, length, and more importantly, access roads through it. We would want 20-foot access roads, which is the typical fire department apparatus access road. If those were cut through the piles, you're going to have a fire in this type of operation at some point. But it would have limited the spread instead of being such a large area. We could have contained it to that. I don't know if you've received calls, but we've received a lot at Fire Administration about, why does it smell of smoke? Ash is falling on our cars. Can you do something about this? And now we're close to burning for 2 weeks, and I would still say you're going to see smoke probably another week unless we get a whole lot more rainfall. It's just unfortunate. There's really, I jokingly earlier said there's not enough water in James City County to put it out, but it really is. It's a significant operation to have tried to extinguish that, and in the end, it was going to result in the same as well. So.
And has the excavator been recovered, or?
Not yet. They tried, we initially worked through some plans with them to try to hook onto it and drag it. They had tried that before we got there, and took a larger excavator and tried to hook a chain to it and drag it. And because the hydraulics were out and the boom was down, it was just locked up and wouldn't move. So this is a picture. Our fire marshal's office was out there again this morning, following up on a few complaints of smoke in the area, and took this photo. And then this last one I have, I'm sorry, back me up one slide, Jason. Sorry. You can see the excavator there that earlier would have been up on a pile 25 or 30 feet high, now down almost to ground level. So it's unfortunate we're not able to salvage that. And I know certainly if you've dealt with the smoke, and as the humidity's been up and it's been cloudy, that makes the smoke hang lower. And I talked to Mr. Stevens this morning, he said he could smell it in Newtown. So, we've been getting a lot of those complaints. So.
Been able to smell some smoke from Canada.
That's correct. So I'd be happy taking it. I know there's a lot of pictures, but I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Questions?
So I was going to ask you the question about how tall is too tall for a pile like that? And so it sounds like it was too tall.
Yeah, so, you can have specific requirements through an SUP process, and we've got those in other places. The standard, as I understand from working with the zoning team on this, the recent SUP was from 2016, was really about the concrete and asphalt restoration process. So we go back to the fire prevention code, which those piles would be 250 feet long, 150 feet wide, and 25 feet tall. Kenny? Thank you. 25 feet tall. So this pile height was a little too tall, and certainly should have had some access routes cut through it. That would have been 20-foot apparatus roads between those piles. And I think, in the future, I think we did this following the site over at the airport. We had a fire back in 2016 or 2017. We worked with zoning and bring them back into the SUP. Those requirements, I believe, were a little bit more stringent on pile size. So out of compliance, although I personally believe the fire prevention code, that pile is still pretty significant, 250 feet long, 150 feet wide, 25-foot tall is still a significant pile.
Thank you for all the work and Fire Marshal Lamb as well and your crews. I mean, just amazing. Saying thank you for that and give us an update when it finally goes out.
Goes out, will do.
About a month later. I just wanted to, I talked to the chief while I was out there and I said, this is a great thing to bring to not only citizens, but to the board. You know, when we have people that come up and say, why are you getting more firefighters? Why are you getting, and you know, these events don't happen every day, but when they do, it's good that we have mutual aid agreements with our communities around us.
Absolutely.
That they can help and we can help them as well. But our new firefighters that we just hired went through the class. A lot of those came out there and did some stuff as well. So, you know, some of our newer firefighters got a lot of experience real quick on brush fires. And, you know, when I told Chief, I said, when they come to us and ask us, hey, we need somebody or we need an extra couple of people to do this. And, you know, and the biggest thing is having the manpower in the stations that are existing and make sure we're covered there with a little bit of extra in order for days off, injuries, and that sort of thing. And we've done real well. And, you know, Chief says, you know, he's happy with what he has and all that. But there's always, you know, that coming up is we have firefighters retire and get injured and that sort of thing. So this is a perfect example of every now and then occasion that everything's out of the house. And, okay, what do we do there? And how the team, not only from our general services, our police, our fire, our volunteers all came together. It was neat to see the aerial view so you could see where the heat was, where they need to attack, where they need to move equipment. Because the pile was so big, you couldn't see over it unless you climbed up on it. And that, as you can see those logs, and that's why it wasn't something you easily climbed up onto, which you wouldn't want to begin with the fire. So, Chief, I tell everybody that was involved in this, you know, this board is very grateful for their hard work. And I know you've gotten a little bit about why do we waste water, but I agree with you. This could have turned into a lot more heading to the interstate, causing accidents, causing the product that they did have there to catch fire. This was an extremely hot, aggressive fire. And I think the team did a wonderful job. Everybody I talked to out there was, I mean, it's textbook. Everybody was in their positions, doing what they were supposed to, shuttling that water back and forth, and just let them know that this board thanks them very much for all their hard work and all their efforts. I know they had a lot of fun doing it too, because firefighters love fire. So, you know, but thank them for all their hard work, all their efforts, and everything they did to make this, you know, and all the staff behind the scenes, you know, that brought stuff out. And, you know, it just wasn't the firefighters. It was a team effort from around the jurisdiction as well as in-house. So thank you.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. All the mutual aid, just tremendous in the police department, stepping in with their drone. So did it make you think, are you going to keep using their drone? Did it get you, were you like, well, maybe we ought to get a drone team too?
You know, we've talked about that, but having them be able to come out and very quickly put it gave us a whole different perspective on the scene that,
Yeah,
you know,
that
we've been
was
climbing
tremendous.
rock piles and it was like, why are we still on the rock pile when they have a drone that's,
Yeah,
you know, as big as a notebook, and it gives us that type of footage. And I didn't include the picture of the thermals, and in this case,
Yeah.
you basically saw a big blob of orange because it was all hot, or red, but being able to switch into the thermal mode and split screens, and we actually brought the equipment operator over to the command post with the drone footage and said, we want you to take that here and cut this line, where before we'd have been pointing at a pile 25 feet high over there somewhere, and it really gave us some good intel, so it's great.
No presidential hair on fire?
No, good separation between them, everything's fine.
And I told the officers, I said, you know, it was really neat to watch what they were doing, and they had done a look for the rescue day or two before and searched the woods and all that, and using the thermal imaging on that to try to find that individual, and glad the individual was found and everybody was safe. But I told him, I said, it's really neat that we in James City County can buy this equipment and all that. I said, the only thing is I don't get to play with it, so.
And on a personal note, I've never attended a funeral for a firefighter and retired. And I just want to thank you. Your department, all of you, are to be commended for the way that you honored Richard Spadeva, who was a longtime firefighter, retired for our county. And I mean, it was just touching, and having never seen that before. And so I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. You know, so many of us have worked with Richard, and the transfer, our honor guard takes that very seriously, and they coordinated all of that. So
They did
a
an
good job.
excellent job.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chief.
Okay, the next item also.
Oh,
All right, under board considerations, contract award for $833,350 for a replacement ambulance. Take it over.
So in part of our capital improvement program, we replace our ambulances about the 10 or 11 year mark. And in the last couple of years, we went from, we've been using diesel medic units for probably close to 15, 16 years. And are in the process of transitioning back to gasoline motors, because a lot of the emissions issues we run into with the diesel engine. So the one we already have, that Station 5, the two that are on order, we expect delivery for. They were awarded last budget year, expected delivery in the February-March timeframe. And then these two, when they were delivered, most likely 30 or 32 months from now, will give us 5 frontline ambulances that are using gasoline motors. And I think just the experience we've had with the one and working with our fleet equipment buddy Stewart's, talked to jurisdictions throughout Hampton Roads that have made that switch, and it's really helped them with maintenance and keeping that apparatus in service. So we're excited about getting 2 more of those on order. There's nothing different about these. These are the same design that we've been using for the last few years. It's sort of 2 more of the ones that we already have. We use the HGAC contract that we've used for a number of years, and we've had a Horton product now for about 10 years and had good luck with all of those. So this awards the contract for the purchase of 2 of those. Again, delivery is probably 30 months or more from now, based on availability and backlogs. And then there's some additional equipment that we'll also order, the stretchers that go in these and some of those items that are included in the CIP account, but are not part of this contract.
Questions? All right, I'll look to the board for discussion or motion.
I'll move the motion.
All right, a motion, roll call, please, sir.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Chief. All right, number 2, Powhatan Creek Watershed Management Plan Adoption. Mike? Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Wow, Chief Ash, that was amazing. And I'm going to go a little bit off script, Ms. Larson. I hope I'm not too tall. With that, good afternoon, Chairman Hippel, members of the board, Mr. Stevens. I'm Mike Wilson, Section Chief for Resource Protection of the Stormwater and Resource Division, here with Ms. Tony Small and Mr. Daniel Proctor of Stantec, who was our consultant for this project. The county has 6 approved watershed plans, of which Powhatan was the first, and the first to be revised. Many things have changed in the 22 years since the plan was first adopted, including revisions to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004, a bacterial TMDL in 2008 for the Powhatan and Mill Creeks, a revised stormwater management regulations in 2011, and the municipal separate sewer stormwater system, otherwise known as the MS4 permit, in 2013. This watershed management plan is like many of our other approved plans in that it does encourage improved management of the county's resources through the development and private property owner incentives. Powhatan Creek Watershed, located in the central part of the county, is our largest watershed at 22.5 square miles and is subdivided into 12 sub-watersheds. Watershed Management Plan identifies these environmentally sensitive areas and develops specific protection, restoration, and infrastructure retrofit recommendations, including specific strategic actions for watershed protection. The plan also identifies watershed restoration opportunities, including potential projects for the county's capital improvement and maintenance programs. We are happy to answer any questions you might have about this plan, and we do recommend that you adopt the resolution. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Proctor, who will do a brief presentation on the results.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. As Mr. Wilson mentioned, I'm going to provide a very brief overview of the plan and the components of it, as well as some of the public engagement that was performed as part of the plan development. Plan is, the watershed assessment that went into the plan has three main parts. The first is a review of past information that's out there from the last 20 years since the previous plan. We had field level reconnaissance of reviewing conditions in the watershed, and then also desktop analyses for various components. Each of them are shown on this slide. I'll hit on some of the key findings within each of those components. First was highlighting some of the monitoring data that was reviewed. Bacteria levels in the creek are regularly too high, exceeding state standards, and sediment and nutrient levels over time have been improving, which was a good finding. Impervious cover trends, as far as how much development's happened over the past 20 years and how that's projected in the future, shows significant development throughout the watershed since the previous plan was developed. In fact, the impervious cover has doubled over that 20-year period, and future increases are still projected where there's properties that have not been developed yet. With our field assessments, we reviewed over 40 miles of stream channel throughout the watershed, and our findings from that, 30% of the channels were in poor or marginal conditions, yet 70% of the channels that we reviewed are in relatively good conditions. The water quality modeling performed, we did show that a significant amount of pollution has been treated through existing BMPs. This map shows in green all the existing BMPs, stormwater treatment practices that are throughout the watershed. The modeling also looked at future projected conditions and noted some significant increases in various portions of the watershed, most notably the potential redevelopment of the Eastern State Hospital property. We also performed a conservation area review, looking at over a dozen areas that were looked at 20 years ago, and reassessed the conservation potential based on new findings, new conditions, to help guide future land conservation planning. We did note that some of the areas had already been protected over the past 20 years, and others had been developed and no longer available for conservation, unfortunately. But there were still significant areas throughout the watershed that still has good natural resources value. The plan also looked at a flood risk assessment throughout the watershed of both existing flood-prone areas as well as potential future flood risks based on increased sea level rise and rainfall conditions. There was two of the most flood-prone areas within the county are within Powhatan Creek, Jamestown 1607 and Powhatan Shores. So those make up the majority of the flood risks that were reviewed. And then with the future conditions, about 50% increase in flood-prone properties were observed. So a couple just main takeaways. The overall watershed health has declined over the past 20 years. However, there is still some relatively healthy areas that are worthy of protection and restoration for future activities. The plan included a number of recommendations on how that can be done over the future. We grouped that into 5 categories. We're not going to provide a comprehensive list of recommendations today, but that's in the document. Those include stormwater treatment practices that could be implemented, programmatic activities that the county's already doing that can be expanded upon or continued in the future, regulatory or enforcement considerations, floodplain management improvements, as well as public outreach and education. A couple examples of those, each of those, so with regulatory and enforcement would be updating and improving the special stormwater criteria that the county already has in place, and allow that to help leverage future development for improved water quality of existing problem areas. Programmatic examples include the Clean Water Heritage Program and expanding efforts with that, as well as the septic tank pump out and monitoring program. Stormwater treatment practices include both stream restoration and stormwater treatment practices within the uplands. One example of public education that's important in the watershed is targeting pet waste. There's already a pretty robust program, but there's room for improvement and expansion of that. And then with floodplain management, one of the recommendations is to take a similar review outside of the context of the watershed itself to look at potential routes, transportation routes in between watersheds that could get disrupted. I mentioned there was a lot of public engagement through the process. We had a project website developed early on where the public can go and find out information about the plan, take a survey, as well as provide recommendations on issues or potential improvements to be considered. We had 2 public meetings. The first was in February. It was an initial kickoff and communicating what's to come. Meeting 2 was in May, and that's where we provided a lot more information than we did here today on the findings from the different assessments, as well as get input on draft recommendations. And then we also had some targeted stakeholder meetings for various organizations, both inside and outside of the county. And then this all culminated in July with a 30-day public comment period where a number of comments were received and the plan was revised accordingly.
Questions? You guys go first.
Go ahead. I'm sure you got well, I just found it very informative. I know one thing that was mentioned a lot were our well, not a lot, but that were mentioned was our pump houses, JCSA, being in danger. The importance of stormwater management, which, you know, a lot of times we take it because when we're working with developers, we try to do everything we can do to make sure that we address a lot of these issues on the front end. And that is why, because we're obviously seeing the impact of that. When it's not, Mr. Stevens and I spent last evening with a homeowners association that's been dealing with problems with the developer, several of them involving stormwater for over 20 years now, that I'm sure is impacting our waterways. So, you know, but I was interested when you were talking about, and I saw it in the report too, about working with some getting the flood information, talking about transportation, because I know that the two that you noted, one is in Mr. Supervisor McGlennon's district, one is in mine, but I know there was others that were in the Berkeley district as well. And that one that we've had some issues with, but we've tried to work on those, but that's quite worrisome to me. So I hope we can delve into that a little deeper. And then anything that we can do about education, and then the importance of, as we get an application before us about Eastern State property, we're just going to have to really make sure that we are working with staff and if we decide to go forward on something, to make sure that we are really tight on that, because that is obviously going to have a huge impact. So I just appreciate the information, and I found it so interesting. So thank you.
A tremendous amount of information, tremendous amount of effort to get into the details of these things. My impression is that we've done some remediation over the years, and I'm just a little curious about the question with our stream bed restorations that we've done. Are they over time holding up well and maintaining the kind of quality of water improvement that we would anticipate and hope for? And then related to that, are we seeing any impact as a result of climate changes that are producing more extreme rain events and the like?
As far as the restoration efforts that have happened, there have been a lot of improvements in those locations. Oftentimes those are more localized and don't necessarily translate to large improvements throughout the watershed, but in those specific locations, definitely. As far as future flood risks, the sea level rise was a very pronounced issue for additional homes and pump stations along Necoland in particular, but the effects of sea level rise have tended to be below Jamestown Road, and even though the tidal conditions of the creek continue up, Jamestown Road kind of creates a separation where flooding upstream of Jamestown Road is almost entirely based on rainfall. And the study does show that the projected, well, not just projected, the observed increased rainfall conditions have shown significant increases in the flood elevations versus what's in the FEMA mapping.
That's especially south of Jamestown Road then?
North of Jamestown Road as far as the rainfall effects.
Okay. And then we took action recently to change the calculation of permitted units to take into account developable as opposed to the gross acreage of land. Is that something that you would anticipate having any kind of impact on? I'm assuming now as we move forward, we're trying to make sure that any development that occurs will produce ideally a zero impact on erosion and stormwater impacts.
Yes, that can have an improvement. Any new development will have more robust stormwater regulations they have to comply with.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Say the last? Okay. Daniel, appreciate you coming out and discussing this with us. And I saw in the report 70% is good as of right now in the watershed. So what that's telling me is anything added from this point on is gonna bring that level down possibly. Is there any way we can improve that from 70 to 75 or 80? And, I know if we don't do anything, it may improve on its own to a certain point. But is there anything we can move that needle up to get a better rating than 70? Can we get a 75 on it over a 20-year period, not tomorrow, but over time?
Yes, a number of the recommendations that are provided there, all of those collectively can help improve.
So, so there is a chance that we can help in our own way restore the waterways over time. But there's a lot of things that we'll need to do and regulations in order to, what we're doing right now is holding it, but to improve it, we're gonna have to up our game. Correct?
And, I do want to clarify the 70%. There was a wide range of stream ratings, and that groups the two better quality ratings from the protocols used. And over the last 20 years, some of the streams have improved from the conditions in the initial findings. So that does help show that a lot of the efforts the county have already taken for restoration did have a positive effect. But then on the flip side, some other channels have worsened significantly over the last. So those risks are still there, and still more work to be done.
That's what I was looking at in the report. I was looking at, okay, the smaller stream beds leading into the watershed, we're doing a lot better, but the watershed as a whole, even though it's all considered one thing, but the main part of the body was struggling, but say the fingers were doing better.
So, some of the fingers were, some of the fingers have degraded as well, though. Depends on the location and where the development had happened.
Right. And that's all due to development.
Right.
A lot of it, not all. I shouldn't say all. I saw a report in there where the duck or the geese were contaminating upstream and all that, but development is the biggest factor, meaning not necessarily houses, but parking lots and roads and all of it together.
First of all, I want to say thank you. Really a good report. I'm very pleased because we asked for this in a very expeditious manner, and we got it not only in an expeditious manner but in an excellent manner. So I'm very happy with the study because it gives us a document to work from. Especially the executive summary was helpful. Because when you get into the nuts and
100
bolts, you'll be there all night long. I just a couple of things out of the executive summary that I thought were really very good points. Okay, and on the second page, you said it's possible not only to minimize or eliminate the negative effects of development on the built environment, but also to reverse some of the damage already done. Viewed holistically, these efforts are not quick, easy, or inexpensive. And I would have added another one, or likely. And that gets back to the basic premise is that prevention versus cure. When we're out there trying to fix a broken watershed, it's a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult. It's much easier for us to do this by doing it right to begin with. And I think the 20-year history in Powhatan Creek watershed has shown that we don't have a real good track record of doing that. And I say that from an approval standpoint of what the board has to do. Staff struggles with us and gets along best they can. So, I would another one that I found sort of a rather eye-watering statement here was talking about conservation areas, habitat corridors, rare threatened species. It says we can help guide future land conservation efforts to protect these locations. Development or other forms of land disturbance have impacted some conservation areas, in some cases irreparably. So there are places where we have done irreparable damage. But this is a good tool. It's only as good as the use we put it to. We've had some cases in the past where I think we made some bad decisions, even fairly recently, where I think we put too much into too small an area where it has an adverse impact. We got a couple more coming at us that are really, really big. And this document is going to be really critical for us to be looking at. But it's going to be the political will of this board to make sure that whatever development we do allow to occur in the Powhatan Creek watershed doesn't make it worse. And thank you for this document. This gives us the tools to do it. So I'm happy to move adoption of the plan.
Sounds good. Got a motion on the floor?
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, number 3, ORD-22-0005, possible zoning ordinance revision to the use of list of general business district B1. Terry, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. At its meeting on April 12, 2022, the Board of Supervisors adopted an initiating resolution to consider possible amendments regarding the use list of the General Business District B1. Since that meeting, staff has reviewed the use list of the B1 district to examine whether there were any uses that could be identified as no longer consistent with the intent of the B1 district, or uses that might be appropriately included in the use list that are not included currently. Staff has also examined the use lists of similar commercial districts in surrounding localities for any significant differences compared to the county's B1 use list. And finally, staff reviewed the 2045 comprehensive plan for any language or goals, strategies, and actions pertinent specifically to the B1 use list. In the course of these reviews, staff did not immediately identify recommended uses to delete or add to the B1 use list. At its August 10th, 2023 meeting, the Policy Committee agreed with staff's review and did not have any recommended amendments without any further guidance from the Board of Supervisors. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
It's hard to argue with a 35-year employee.
I just had one question, and that is, what kind of principles were guiding your recommendations in terms of where SUPs were going to be required versus where there wouldn't? In some instances, I was kind of thinking, well, this is going to generate a lot of traffic, but so's that. And so is it just traffic? Is it a combination of factors? What would have been the general guidance that you were using?
Well, as far as this review, it was just for the B1 use list. So we were just looking at the uses and comparing to other localities and whether anything stood out as far as to add or delete.
So nothing in particular that you would have brought new to this consideration, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? You. All right, look for the board for any discussion or motion.
What would we move?
Motion, was the motion itself just to accept the report?
Leave it as is.
Leave it as
Yeah,
is?
accept the report
Yeah, I was going to say
as
exactly what.
presented.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good
Chairman,
afternoon.
members of the board. So if you recall, this was one of the original 5 of the initiating resolutions that the board adopted. So again, if it would be the pleasure of the board to accept the report as presented and direct staff not to pursue this item at this time. We can certainly always revisit in the next year or two if something comes up. If the board wants us to relook at it, that would help us close out that initiating resolution.
So let me just ask one more question if I could then, and that is, sometimes these zones do adjoin other kinds of land uses. For instance, you might have a zone that is near a school facility or a place where people likely to be drawn as tourists. I was particularly interested in the question of some products that are likely to be marketed in the foreseeable future, and some that are already marketed relating to tobacco in particular, or other forms of smoking, eating, whatever. And just wondering whether there would be be any justification for thinking about them requiring SUPs?
So really, I think we took a big stab at that, as you recall, sort of
Right.
within the B1 district and with other zoning districts. We had a different initiating resolution, as the board will recall, that asked us to pull out and advance the whole issue of vape and other types of products. And I think the benefit of what the board adopted there, when that's been a couple of months ago now, if not a little bit longer, is that some of the definitions and some of the phrasing of that particular ordinance did just that. It was a little bit more forward-thinking, sort of lumped everything into that SUP bucket to be a little bit more proactive and thinking of trying to capture some things that maybe we don't know are out there just yet or might be on the near horizon. And so, I think by virtue of a lot of that discussion, a lot of those uses being pulled out, already dealt with by the board, I think that took some of the pressure off of the B1. And to answer your earlier question, I think the strength of your zoning ordinance right now, you still have, regardless of the district, but B1 especially, you still have the overarching commercial SUP requirements. So, things that are going to be extra burdensome on the traffic, 100 peak hour trips, commercial buildings that are more than 10,000 square feet, regardless of where they are on that use list, are still going to require special use permit, public hearing, and consideration by the board. We still have, a landscaping ordinance, which requires different landscape buffers depending on what you are next to or what the property to you is next zone to. We still have requirements for screening outdoor operations and storage. Still have requirements from the rest of the landscape ordinance that I think go to mitigate a lot of those impacts that you see with some of the commercial uses. So I think, to your point, a lot of that work has already been done. A lot more was covered through the vape ordinance.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, I'll look forward for a motion.
Move the motion, which is not to accept this
Accept this report.
report.
And no further action.
Yeah.
Roll call. Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, board requests and directives.
I've got one brief one, and that is that as the rep to the Chamber of Commerce and sitting on the Military Affairs Committee, we've kicked off the Home for the Holidays program already. We're in the fundraising aspect of it right now. This program is designed to provide travel stipends to very junior enlisted folks at the military bases at Yorktown Naval Weapons Station, the Marine Security Regiment, and the Coast Guard. We sent 40 people home with $300 travel credit last year. Our goal this year is to try to get 60 because we had 70-something applicants. We weren't able to get to all of them last year. And so we're in a fundraising, and if you go to the Chamber's website, look for Home for Holidays. There's a link you can donate either to help defray the cost of partial for one person or for one person or whatever. The businesses are very good about helping support this, but we have a lot of individuals in the community. A lot of former retired military participate, a lot of regular citizens who have members of their family that are in the military. So I just want people to be aware that program is going on out there. We'll be taking applications from the service members during the month of November, and the awards will be made the first week of December.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a couple of quick things. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend a Zoom meeting sponsored by the Sierra Club for the area, in which local governments presented information about their initiatives over the course of the last couple of years on improving environmental conditions in their communities and new programs and services that were being provided. It was very interesting, and our General Services Department, Joanna Ripley, did an outstanding job in making her presentation, and I think we stood up very well in comparison to many other localities, and appreciate all the hard work that our staff puts in on that question. Last Friday morning, I also had the opportunity to attend the annual United Way meeting for the Virginia Peninsula with nonprofit organizations and elected officials. And it was a kind of yeah, I don't know if it really says speed dating kind of a format where a couple of elected officials would rotate from one table to another for a total of 6 tables, each of which had 7 or 8 nonprofits present organized around a particular theme. And they talked about what they were doing, and it was very informative, but also suggested that there may be some good opportunities to see how those groups can continue to work together to make sure that their overlapping services are most efficiently deployed, and where we can help out in those regards as well. It was a very useful and successful event with a full room and lots of interesting ideas and identification of obstacles and needs in the community. And then finally, I wanted to mention that on October 5th, Thursday, October 5th, at 6 o'clock in the evening, there'll be an opportunity for citizens of Grove to meet our new police chief, Mark Jameson, at a meeting that I've asked him to attend. It will be held at James River Elementary School, and I'm hoping we'll get the police department's electronic sign out there so that we can make sure that people know about it in advance and have a chance to find out a little bit about the chief's ideas about policing in the county, and so that he can hear the concerns of the citizens about the issues that he would have to deal with. So very appreciative of his time, and hope that we'll get a good turnout that night.
Just very quickly, it seems like, Mr. Stevens, we should be having a school liaison meeting.
Yeah.
Typically, we have one in September.
I will reach out and see. I have not seen anything that would indicate that, but I'll find out where we
Okay,
are. Yes, ma'am.
that'd be great. Also, we had the Tourism Council meeting last week. Just as a reminder, those are open to the public. We saw a little softening over the summer. People were staying in hotels, not necessarily maybe going to as many attractions, thinking maybe it was the heat. It was really hot. So, but continuing to watch continuing marketing efforts. Had our chamber meeting at Eastern State and last week, which was very interesting. They also had a tour available, and I think I toured before. I think Supervisor Eisenhower had as well, and Supervisor McGlennon. And then just want to thank the Green Springs West HOA for having Mr. Stevens and I last night, and Joe Buhite, who has spent considerable hours with the citizens there. He's done a great job. But just as a reminder, when development is not done correctly, it's county resources that go in to try to getting it corrected. It's not the developer that pays. It's all of the citizens of James City County that pay for those additional hours and resources. But big appreciation, and there's a few really big issues over there that need addressing very soon. So that's it.
Thank you. All right, I went to the HR TAC and Harumpha meetings with the county administrator, and we had the finance committee first, and then went into Harumpha and then HR TAC, and I'm the liaison now for the tunnel boring machine and what goes on there. So I'm the connection between that and VDOT and what goes on. So hopefully I'll be able to make a few more visits down into the tunnel. County administrator and I think y'all know that we both went down into the tunnel to have a view of what's going on down there and how far they're going so far. Everything is, knock on wood, going real well. We had a few bumps and all that, but we worked that out. As far as everyone at VDOT was very key to that whole thing, negotiating that project and all that. We just took a vote at the last meeting to send some more funding in there and did a split with VDOT, and that's one thing to save HR TAC from having to fund it all themselves, because they were funding 90% of that project, or a little bit better than 90%. But that project's going along well, and it's back on track, and they're making good progress. So I'll report to you as they get to the bottom of the first one and when they start coming out the other end, and let you know. County Administrator's report.
Chair, members of the board, just two items I'd like to share. One, our Newtown Tunes series, which is our concerts behind Sullivan Square, or on Sullivan Square behind Legacy Hall. Our last two for the season, September 27th and October 4th. The concert starts at 5:30. The gates are open at 5 o'clock. And they have been well received by those in attendance. And so if you're wondering when they end, we have 2 more weeks of that. And I would like to mention, it's a little early, but our Halloween with Heroes, our police department has hosted the event the last several years. There's been a tremendous outpouring of children and parents and others, and we just want to let the community know we are doing that again. It is an exciting and safe trick-or-treating event. Opportunity to come out and meet our law enforcement and other first responders, see a lot of their equipment, talk to them in person, and hopefully have a great evening. It will be held at our law enforcement center at 4600 Opportunity Way, and it's on October 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. So I'll mention it again. I just want folks to know we do intend to do that again. It's been very well received the last couple of years. So that's all I have.
Thanks, sir. All right, next I'll look for a motion to go into closed session to discuss or consider the disposition of public held real estate located at 2054 Jamestown Road, where a discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining positions or negotiating strategies of a public body. And number 2, discuss or consider the acquisition of a parcel of real estate located along Jamestown Road, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of a public body. Number 3, discuss of the awards of a public contract involving the expenditures of public funds and discussions of the terms and scope of such a contract where discussions in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of a public body pursuant of section 2.2-3711A29 of the Code of Virginia and pertaining to a contract between the county, the city of Williamsburg, and the Williamsburg-James City County Schools. Discussion on the awards of the public contract involving the expenditures of public funds and discussion of the terms of scope of such contract where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of a public body pursuant of section 2.2-3711A29 of the Code of Virginia and pertaining to the contract between the York County, James City County, and the City of Williamsburg and the Williamsburg Regional Library. And number 5, consideration of personal matter appointments of individuals to county boards and or commissions pursuant of section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Appointments to the Clean County Commission, appointments to the Chesapeake Bay Board and Wetlands Board, reappointments to Social Service Advisory Boards, and appointments to the Williamsburg Area Arts Commission.
Move the motion to go into closed session for those items, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Roll call.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, now motion on what we took.
Okay, I have a motion for appointments to boards and commissions. If you're ready, can we do them all at one time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. To appointment to the Clean County Commissioner, Commission, Mr. Tim Stanley for a term September 26, 2023 to July 31st, 2026. For the Chesapeake Bay and Wetlands Boards, reappointment of Mr. Charles Roadley, October 2023 to December 1st, 2028. And reappointment of, appointment of Ms. Leslie Bowie, who was formerly an alternate, to a term of October 1st, 2023 to December 1st, 2028. Social Services Advisory Board, Ms. Adrienne Carter, reappointment, term of September 23rd, 2023 to September 23rd, 2027. And Williamsburg Area Arts Commission, Mr. Thomas Phelps, reappointment, September 26, 2023 to June 30th, 2026. And Ms. Robin Phillips, reappointment September 26, 2023 to June 30th, 2026.
We have a motion on the
So
floor. Roll
moved.
call, please.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, I'll need an adjournment until 5 p.m. on October 10th, 2023 for a regular meeting.
So moved.
So move. Roll call, please.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.